Alright, if you didn't catch the last video on this channel, I am refreshing my grenade damage testing series because it is years old at this point. We checked off Void in the last upload, this one's obviously going to be dealing with our arc grenades, and I'm going to keep plugging away at it to get the rest of the subclasses done, hopefully sooner rather than later. But before the grenade throwing extravaganza begins, a few important notes and testing parameters to highlight. This is a PvE video that will focus on single target damage. The testing will be done in the Grasp of Avarice dungeon. But I will touch on each grenade's general functionality for those who may be unfamiliar. When compiling the damage numbers, I tallied up every damage tick that appeared on screen and then compared that to the wipe screen damage for continuity's sake. For the grenades whose damage is a bit more variable, I have run a 5 grenade damage test to get a read on their overall consistency. And with these arc grenades, proximity is going to be a big factor. Unlike some of the Void grenades that do create a static damage field, these arc grenades are all blast driven. The further a target is away from the source, the less damage they will take. All numbers presented will be in terms of base damage, but I am going to have Spark of Shock on for every test, allowing these arc grenades to carry Jolt. If that is not something you want to consider, I will have the number of Jolt hits listed for each grenade, so it should be pretty easy for you to scrub that damage off of the totals. Also, the Spark of Magnitude fragment will be tested individually on any applicable grenades, as will the Touch of Thunder aspect, which is available on the Titan class. And if you haven't been able to tell, I am a bit under the weather and my voice is going to be shot by the end of this, so please bear with me. With that though, we do have 4 grenades that are going to be fairly straightforward to test, and 3 that are going to require a lot more explanation. We're going to get the layups out of the way first. The Flux Grenade. This grenade will stick to enemies or hard surfaces and explodes after about a 1.5 second delay. The maximum radius on that blast is going to be 5 meters, and it does have a long base cooldown of 2 minutes and 32 seconds. And this is really a grenade that is tuned specifically for single target damage. A stuck grenade is dealing 73,150 points of damage in this case, and that is essentially guaranteed when you do hit your mark. About 66k is coming from the blast, and you're getting 1 hit of unscaled jolt damage, netting 5,061. So the damage is up there, and while not mind-blowingly strong, this is quick burst damage. Could be a nice little pop as a single target damage supplement, or if you're trying to focus down a priority target. But there are options in this set that do have the potential to deal more total damage. It's not exceptionally good at ad clearing, and it does have a long base cooldown. So while I do think it could be serviceable in the right situation, I do think it comes up a bit short in overall utility. Next up, the Arcbolt Grenade. This one's going to fork out and strike targets in the immediate area. And by immediate area, that is within 8 meters of the point of impact. And this one does have a pretty quick base cooldown of 1 minute and 45 seconds. Conversely to the Flux Grenade, the Arcbolt's main draw is probably going to be ad clearing. If you do strike a target with it directly, you can net almost 32,000 points of total damage, but versus a single target, that does end up being pretty low when compared to other options. For general ad clearing though, it does do a nice job. It does have a friendly working radius, packs enough damage to knock out most red bar enemies, comes back up pretty quick, and if you are running Spark of Shock, that jolt can get bounced around between targets. So if you are looking for an ad clearing grenade, this can be a solid pick. Versus a single enemy, not so much. Moving on to the Skip Grenade. On bounce, it'll split into 4 smaller grenades that lock onto and track targets. Base cooldown here again, 145. Each one that hits the target is dealing 1,218 points of impact damage and 4,566 points of blast damage. So when looking at the consistency test, it was the low, the 28,197, that was the most common result. That's clean contact with all 4 submunitions with 1 hit of jolt. The high of 33,000 was only hit once, and that was a result of one of the submunitions coming in late and securing an extra hit of jolt. And while this was unlikely in my experience, it is still a possibility. So as a whole, the Skip Grenade's not packing a ton of damage, and for ad clearing, it's okay. My biggest problem with it's always been the pot's basically getting split 4 ways, so each individual submunition is not carrying a ton of damage in its own right. And while it's not really noticeable in lower end content, in scaled up activities, sometimes they just don't pack enough of a punch to clear out ads as efficiently as I would hope. But if you are someone who does like using the Skip Grenade in PvE, feel free to sell me on it. I'd be more than happy to hear out an opposing viewpoint on this grenade. Next up, the Flashbang Grenade. After making contact, this grenade will explode on a 1 second delay. The blast radius is going to stretch out to 8 meters, and it does apply the standardized arc blind effect. This will render applicable targets non-combative for 10 seconds. Another thing to note here, it does have the quickest cooldown of the set at 1 minute and 31 seconds. And while the damage consistency test probably wasn't necessary, I did include it here anyway. Provided your grenade detonates somewhere near the target, 37,000 is about what you can expect. If you strong arm it, noodle arm it, or if it bounces a bit off course, you'll get a little less. But this is also the first grenade that we've come across that is affected by the Touch of Thunder aspect. No additional damage here, but you do get a blinding flash on bounce and on detonation, which can go a long way in catching more enemies with that status effect. And I do think the Flashbang in general is a pretty solid grenade. Blind is a nice status effect to have in your pocket for higher end content. The damage, while not great, it's not terrible either. It does work within a pretty serviceable blast radius, and with that fast cooldown, you will get a lot of uptime out of this grenade. All in all, I do think it's a pretty useful tool to have at the ready. And with that, easy ones are out of the way. The remaining 3 grenades can be affected by both Touch of Thunder and Spark of Magnitude, so kind of a lot to go over. The Lightning Grenade, and for this one specifically, I did consider switching testing environments just to get you some better on-screen visuals. Obviously, I wouldn't collect any data in there, but good placement options in the Ogre fight are pretty limited. In the end, I just decided to roll with it though. Figuring out theoretical max damage isn't terribly difficult when you know how the grenade behaves, and I think there probably is some value in knowing that not every grenade is going to work out perfect in every situation. But that being said, this is a directional grenade that emits periodic arc blasts. These blasts can reach up to 12 meters in length and are about 10 meters wide at that point. Total duration of the grenade is 6 seconds, in which 4 arc blasts will occur, accompanied by 4 hits of jolt. Each blast can deal a maximum of 19,034 points of damage to the Ogre, so perfect world, that's 96,380 points of damage dealt. But, as alluded to earlier, this is not a perfect environment due to the fact the boss makes a conscious effort to exit the damage field, and that is pretty well reflected in the damage test. I hit a high of 77k, the low was around 28, and I saw an average of 52,765 for the 5 grenade set. If you are equipping Spark of Magnitude, this will bring the total duration up to 8 seconds, and you will get 1 more arc blast. Maximum potential damage in this case is just over 120k, the best I was able to hit was around 80. The average did move up to near 60,000 in this test, but still that's half the grenade's full potential. Next, we're going to set Spark of Magnitude aside and just equip the Touch of Thunder aspect. This allows Titans to carry 2 lightning grenade charges, and for the sake of this test, I'm going to throw them in rapid succession. If that's not how you would intend to use them in game, then just take the base results and multiply it by 2. But when used in this manner, from the initial stick of the first grenade to the final blast of the second, total duration's about 7.75 seconds. You can get 8 full arc blasts, but you're only going to see 5 jolt hits due to the cooldown between activations. Max damage here could be as high as 177,500, and I did manage to hit 155k in one case. My goal when throwing them was to trap the Ogre between the 2 grenades, and it kinda worked. Some damage was definitely left on the table, but it did work out better than I expected. When combining Spark of Magnitude and Touch of Thunder, duration's going to move up to about 9.5 seconds, you're going to get 10 arc blasts and 6 hits of jolt. Altogether, that's 220,706 points of potential damage. Did I hit anywhere close to that? No, I did not. But on paper, this is the arc grenade that can hit for the highest damage totals. It does have its limiting factors, obviously placement and positioning. It does take a fair amount of time for the grenade to get its damage out. We're looking at a long cooldown time here of 2 minutes and 32 seconds. And it is destructible, but this is a stout grenade if you can harness its potential. Next up, the Storm Grenade, which does create a lightning storm at the point of impact. Base cooldown is 2 minutes and 1 second, and I found the effective radius to be about 7 meters. And while it does create quite the spectacle when it goes off, the overall damage isn't as impressive. There's an initial strike that carries 22,470 points of damage, and a single target can be hit by 1 secondary strike, netting just under 16k. For the jolt, there was a case where the primary and secondary strike hit too close together, and I only walked away with 1 hit, but typically you should get 2. So the high that I have listed there at 48,453 should be a solid max damage total for you. The low of 42.4 is when that second jolt didn't come through, and we lost a little extra based on proximity. With the Spark of Magnitude fragment, total duration increases to about 3 seconds, and we do have the potential for 1 more secondary strike. Here again, that damage test high of 64,314 can be considered as max damage, but you can see a little more of that proximity-based inconsistency creeping in with an average of just over 58,000. And we are going to see a bit more of that with the Touch of Thunder aspect. Essentially, this is going to replace that static secondary strike with a mini storm that tracks targets. Total uptime of the grenade is now about 5.5 seconds. The strikes from the mini storm are half as powerful at 7,931 apiece, but they are far more abundant. 10 appears to be the max that it'll register. And just to clarify, that is referring to the damage ticks, not the visual effects that are occurring on screen. Alongside this, you can get up to 4 hits of jolt as well. But since we are dealing with proximity-based damage, in-game totals can be pretty variable. I'm figuring 122,000 to be the theoretical max, which I almost hit with one grenade, dealing 120,595, but my average across 5 grenades was roughly 20,000 less than that, with the lowest grenade missing the max potential by about 39,000. When the aspect and the fragment are combined, it's only bringing the duration up by about a second, but I was seeing up to 14 secondary damage ticks register and up to 5 hits of jolt. So that would move the potential max up to around 158,000 if every instance of damage hit dead nuts on target. Best I was able to achieve in the consistency damage test was 130,726, while the worst grenade severely underperformed and only brought home about 71,000. Average across the 5 for this test was 113,717. So like I said, in-game results can swing around quite a bit with Touch of Thunder, but still the numbers that you're seeing from it are pretty darn good. The grenade in its base form, while not terrible, probably does serve better as an ad clearing option. Titans can kinda get the best of both worlds though. Single target damage and ad clearing capabilities both see a nice boost with the aspect. And while it did get nerfed a while back because its damage and its duration were pretty ridiculous, it still is a really solid grenade. And we finally made it to the last one. Pulse Grenade, base cooldown 2 minutes and 1 second. This one explodes into a spherical damage field on impact, and periodically pulses, damaging enemies within the area of effect. Max radius is 4 meters, total duration is 4 seconds, and in that time frame, the grenade will pulse 5 times. The initial blast scores 7,931, each pulse deals 12,689, and when rolling in the 4 jolt hits, the max damage totals out to 91,620. Which I was able to hit in one instance during the consistency test. The low grenade only brought in about half of the possible damage, but I didn't think the average of the 5 was too bad, coming in at 73,184. But in terms of max potential for a base grenade, only the lightning grenade has it beat, and that's by about 5,000 points. When applying Spark of Magnitude, the grenade will pulse 2 more times for a total of 7. And you actually will get 2 more hits of jolt, which I did find odd. When I ran this test a few years back, I was seeing 3 jolts at base, 5 with Spark of Magnitude. Now we're at 4 and 6. I'm not sure exactly what's changed, but I'm not gonna complain. But with the fragment, the theoretical max damage, which I did hit yet again, is 127,279. And the average damage across the set did cross the 100k threshold. Now looking at things with just Touch of Thunder, we're back down to the base duration, but the pulse damage is going to gradually ramp up, going from 13,001 to 15,861. Also, the grenade will self-generate ionic traces while it deals damage. You can see up to 3. Max damage in this case is going to be that 101,886. And every grenade that I threw in this set was pretty darn good, which really doesn't do the job of showcasing how much damage you could potentially miss, but I'm not going to complain about getting lucky every now and then. With Touch of Thunder and Spark of Magnitude both equipped, you can now generate up to 4 ionic traces, and you are going to get 2 more pulses at max damage, that being 15,861. It does not climb up past that. But still, this grenade can now deal a maximum of 143,254 points of damage. The average across the 5 grenades came in right at 118,000, and that's even with a bad grenade that did not break the 80k mark. So really good numbers up and down the board here, and a bit of utility sprinkled in if you're using Touch of Thunder with its ionic traces. As a whole though, the Pulse Grenade does have good single target damage, it's serviceable in ad clearing, it's consistent, it's easy to use, it's just one of those all around solid grenades, even if you're not a Titan making use of Touch of Thunder. But hey, we did it, got them all done, that's a wrap. The full infographic for the entire set is on screen now. It was a nightmare getting everything on one page and the data is really crammed in there. But feel free to pour it over for as long as you'd like, take a screenshot of it for your own personal records, or just revisit the video whenever you want to take another look at it. Do as you please, I made it for you. But with that, have a great day, Guardians, and I'll catch you on the next one.